Hello, my name is Gerbsnail, and welcome back to the map tutorial, this time with a much better microphone setup. I am so sorry for the wait on this, but as I've figured out, it is really hard for me to talk about this entire process, especially since I have to determine what level of person I'm trying to target this towards, and the way I've figured it out is that this kind of tutorial is going to be more tailored towards someone who's like set up their Guardian in Blender before, that kind of thing. You know, more basic Blender projects, maybe sticking it in and doing some lighting stuff, but like not ever like going too deep into materials. And that is what we're going to be talking today. We're going to be talking about materials, the bread and butter of your map, and we're going to try to get you to a level where you could do this. Um, I will say that this cannot be a comprehensive tutorial, as always, but this time around, while I'm going to be showing a few examples in this, I'm not going to be, it's not going to be fully comprehensive, but I streamed the good first half of this map, like basically the whole process of me deriving all of these different materials instead of the second half, which would be just putting everything down and copy pasting and plug and play. I streamed all of that, so if you go to the live portion of my YouTube channel, you can find a good 5 hours, I want to say, of just map and doing this part of the process. So go there, you just look at that, and that should give you a better idea of like obviously, once this whole tutorial is done, this map will be put up, or yeah, it'll be put up on the drive, and you can actually take a look at it in more detail. But if you want to see how I figured this out, how I did this process, or what have you, um, yeah, going back and looking at those streams is going to be very good for you. Um, so yeah, that's where we're at. That's what we're gonna do. Let's get started by talking about what an actual material is. So let's take this rock here, for example. Let's pop into shading. And, you know, what a material is, at the end of the day, is that meshes in Destiny and any game, really, they're very low poly. And they're just a blob, and they don't really look like a rock. And what we're trying to do is figure out what combination of this massive set of textures down here is going to be there in a way that makes it look like a rock. And as you can see, once we do figure that process out, it looks very close to what a rock looks like. And with that, obviously we need to do a bunch of mixing and matching, and this material is pretty straightforward, which is why it's going to be good to talk about. But it's got a lot of things, and the first distinction I need to make are between textures, which are what you see here on the left, and channels. And channels are the things that the textures are made out of. So for example, we have this right here, this green channel, or this green looking texture here. And this green looking texture here, in fact, I can pop it out a little bit more for you. This is actually, if you can see, it's made up of different channels. So if I just look at the alpha channel, there's nothing there, but the red channel, there's this. In the green channel, there's something else. And blue, I don't think there's anything on it in this case. So that's what I mean by channel, is that not necessarily one texture equals one output. Most of the time, there's multiple. So that is part of the challenge of this, is figuring out how do these textures pull apart and mix together in a way that takes our solid blob of nothing and turns it into the rock. And so that's the name of the game. So let's see here. To start off, let's take a look at what these inputs here and what is the GURB BSDF. So if we take a look inside here, it's a little complicated, but it is basically the sort of thing that I figured out more recently to help me work on a map without making myself suffer. Because all of these right here are things that I would have to do every single time I wanted to do something. So we'll get into exactly why these all exist. But let's, for now, take this principal BSDF, pull it out, and look at it one thing at a time. So, base color, really easy. You got this, and that's the color of the rock. And if you plug in a texture, say this one right here, no way, it looks like it's the texture of a rock. And then things get more complicated and a little bit more um, less straightforward. But metallic, obviously makes the rock, look metallic. Obviously, not going to be happening for a rock. Roughness is how rough the object is, so low roughness makes it nice and smooth. First thing with Destiny, by the way, in Destiny, very importantly, they don't have roughness channels; they have smoothness channels. So what you have to do is that um, when you have your roughness here, you have to. I added a lot of other things like desaturation and clamping, but very importantly, at the end, we have to invert the color. And so the opposite of smoothness is roughness, and roughness is what Blender uses. So already we've got to make things a little bit more complicated specifically for Destiny. IOR we don't touch. If we make this an alpha blend material, alpha is how transparent the rock is. So sometimes, like with leaves and things, you'll have an alpha channel. And later I will show you what all of these different channels look like. Or maybe I've already started popping them up on screen. That is something for editor groups now to decide later. Next, we have normal, which is easier to describe just by looking at a texture. It looks like this. And when you place it on there, you might notice that it kind of lines up with the rock. And what it is that it adds some artificial bump detail to the rock in order to make it look more rocky and have more detail that isn't actually there. And it's a way to save space and geometry, and it's very important. And the way that we deal with it, specifically in Blender, is that we have to do all of this fun, complicated math in order to make it look right. Technically, this is the bare minimum where you have to invert the green and channel and stuff like that. But what it is I can't remember which direction it is, but there's like OpenGL and the other one, which I can't remember. Is it DirectX? Yeah, it's DirectX and OpenGL. I can't remember which is which, but Blender uses one and Destiny uses the other, so we have to do this conversion in order to make that happen. And there's more complicated things that happen down here. The end result is that all you need to know is that in between your actual normal input into the BSDF and your texture, you're sticking in this invertinator. This is another thing that I use constantly with my principal BSDFs. And as well, it has built-in mixing. So if we take our other things here, our other little bits of detail, um, if you want less of one, you can just sort of mix it like that. And that's something I use all the time, and you can see that that is actually completely built into the GURB BSDF. You take a look inside here, it's just mapped inside. So, end result of this is that we take our normal, we plug that into our BSDF out here, and it makes our rock look bumpy. And as well, the strength controls it completely, and you can make it, yeah. So, there's some more stuff in here like specular. We don't really use that anymore because I've realized the error of my ways, but what it is like the how much the rock actually reflects light. So like when you have full IOR there, you can see light is reflecting to the camera. When you turn that off, no longer reflects light. I don't use this one very often, but it's something that that can exist. Transmission, coat, sheen, we don't really touch those. Emission, this is, you can make a rock glow, you can make it glow really bright, and you can change that glow. Very important things, for there's a lot of emissive objects in Destiny. And, yeah. There's some more complicated things like parallax that I did not just talk about now. Do we have parallax pass? Oh, we do. We might be able to talk about this real quick, which is the concept. I'm actually going to not talk about that now. Fuck you, past curb snail. Let's talk about it. Okay, so we have our texture here. It is texture. It looks pretty flat. It's on the object. Now, if we take out our parallax pass, and we plug that into here, nothing changes. However, we change the strength of the parallax now. Ooh, it looks like it's underneath. Destiny uses this absolutely everywhere. I generally don't, but parallax is a thing that does exist, and as well a good example of this actually. If I take a look at everything and we go over to the windows, we take a close look at the windows here. This window is actually completely flat, and it's like, you know, 3 polygons. But part of it is parallaxed to look like it's behind. It isn't perfect and definitely has its limitations, but that is what parallax is. Anyways, now let's go back to here. And so you can see all of the channels I just mentioned except for one, which is AO. So if we took a look at this green texture here, we take a look, or yeah, we look at the green channel. It's this right here. This is ambient occlusion. And what ambient occlusion is it's fake shadows. So once again, trying to save space, make things look better, fake shadows are included. And what it's doing actually inside here is literally just taking the base color of the object and multiplying it by the base shadow. So certain parts look darker than others. And if we take a look at this right here, I also have AO strength. You can see it just adds that little extra bit of detail. It's one of the main things that we're looking at because it does actually make a huge difference on how the material looks. Okay, so with that, I think that's all the basics. Let's talk about what these channels will look like in practice. So, obviously our base color, it's going to look like some combination of all of the lovely colorful textures up here. Usually you get a few of them. This time we had 3. Yeah, we also had this one. And, yeah, they will sometimes have like a corresponding normal map like this one does. And yeah, they're the easiest to tell that it's a base color because it actually looks like a thing. So that's our base color. Now, one of the things, and I wish I had Alka. You know what? Screw it. I'll pull up Alkahest right now. One of the things that we found out recently, by the way, Alkahest is your best tool for map stuff. Let's take a look at EDZ free roam. All right. Alkahest best tool, favorite. Render layers. Let's turn off the water and the airs. Where's the map? Ah, here we go. Wonderful. Okay. So one of the things that we noticed, if you take a look at this right here, let me collapse all my tabs here, is that right now this is combined, and in fact this is a really good way to explain it. So albedo, this is our base color, and then you got your normal, which looks a little strange in this because it isn't showing the normal maps most of the time, except for on the ground there. PBR stack, that's not something we worry about really. RT3, nothing. Okay, smoothness and fuzz. So, take a look at this, and then take a look at that. In this case, I cannot believe I'm saying this. Okay, hang on. We're going to single this out here. Because for once, it is different. But, take a look at this. What it's doing, almost always, except for the one instance I managed to find, almost always, what it's doing is that it's just desaturating the base color. And, that is generally what I do. So we go back to this material here. You can see I literally just plugged it into the roughness channel. And as you can see there, it works. I mean, effectively, if I take a look at this here, that's our roughness if we see it before inverting. That looks like a rock when it's smooth. And this is generally what your roughness channel should look like when you put it in sort of like that grayish color with lots of detail. So that looks nice. We already talked about AO. Alpha, we don't have any alpha, but if I quickly hop back, come on, Blender, you can do this. Please let me look at the rest of the map. There we go. So if we take a look at these here leaves, yeah, let me pull out a separate color. We'll get into all the nodes that you're gonna want to use later, but for now, if you take a look at this, this is what an alpha channel looks like. It is pure black and it is pure white almost always. And you'll know if it isn't that, generally if it is like a window type thing where it's sort of like half transparent. But in this case, we want pure distinctions here because obviously they are not going to add a bunch of geometry. Like if you take a look at this, if you take a look at this now with this is what the polygons of this looks like. It would take way too much geometry to model out every single leaf. So instead, they do alpha channels. And it still looks perfectly fine, and that's more optimization for the game. So anyways, that's an alpha channel. All right, going back to a rock. I already talked about normals. Normals, they're this distinct purple color. You know what a normal is now. Okay, and that's about it. Yeah, main features, I think I already talked about all of these here. You can like distinctively change the this here. You can change the alpha if you really wanted to, AO strength, metallic and specular, all that is good. And that is the very, very basics of materials. So now I think we should start talking about all the different nodes that you want to use. And with that, I'm just going to look around on the map, see if I can find a good example. Find a better example than this. Hang on, let me cut to find a better example. Alright, so I gave up and decided to make my own example. So we got our two base color nodes here, or not nodes, textures. And we're going to talk about the mixed color node first, because this really is the node, really, that I'm going to use for most of what I do. And it's very simple. So we plug these two in, we take a look at the result, and obviously what this is, this factor right here, is how much of one is mixed with the other. So all 0, it's going to be the first one, completely 1, it's going to be the second one, and when they're in there, they're kind of like in between. Generally, the 3 that I would say that I use most often, I use multiply and mix most often, but the other ones that are used sometimes you want to do add in some weird specific circumstances, and overlay sometimes you also might want to do. Kind of depends on the effect that you want to achieve. Overlay we actually use inside the invertinator here. If I pull that back out, you can see here what it's doing is that it's literally the factors in there, it's just overlaying, and then the factors there just decide how much each one is overlaid. Not the best system in the world, but it works. Anyways, but multiply, we use this one, it does multiply the colors together. This one's kind of hard to describe, but other than that, it just multiplies. There's obviously a lot more happening behind the scenes, but generally a lot of time they multiply together, and if they aren't just completely multiplied like this, if you take a look at certain channels like this one right here, you can see here there's this weird thing here. I didn't really talk about it before when I was talking about channels and stuff before, but you're gonna find these weird middle ground type things, and they're generally like mixes, and they're used to mix and stuff, but I found, especially with these two, you just plug that in as a factor, and if you take a look at that, that right there is a pretty well mixed together thing. So that is that node. Another one that I want to talk about, which we could talk about here, let's talk about math nodes. Math nodes, they do math. I know, kind of crazy. Honestly, I really only like add, multiply, sometimes multiply, add, and that's about it. Sometimes subtract, sometimes divide, but not really much. It's a very powerful node, and in fact, if I unhide this map, some of the materials that I didn't make, which we'll get into later, like the Cabal material, um, you want to try, like, at the maximum end game of this, you want to only use math nodes, and I'm personally not there yet. And the things that I do are not going to be perfect, specifically because I don't look at like HLSL code and everything to solve and figure out what my materials are doing. I just kind of wing it for the most part, so I don't get to this level. Um, but that's yeah, math nodes they're great. Um, and as well in this case, it's when you're dealing with black and white textures mostly. Because when you can do this, suddenly now I can add and subtract and all that. And if we take a look at what that does in the factor, obviously, um, because you have to remember what this is doing down here is how much of is this affected by the other one. And so when I'm adding and subtracting, you can see there you're controlling how much is there. And then same thing, obviously, multiply. You can multiply how much the effect is scaled there and stuff like that. I know I'm not explaining this the best, but yeah. Anyways, next node we want to talk about is sort of like the manual version of those math operations, which is the color ramp. The color ramp, it's very powerful once again, and as well you can do things like change the colors there to do global scaling. You can also use this in wacky ways and change the colors to be whatever you want for other kinds of mixing. But personally, I usually use them for fine control of mix node or mix channels like this to make it look exactly how I want. However, one thing is that in a node group here, you might notice this is just kind of its own little menu here, and you can't actually plug this into a node group. So a lot of times, especially on my personal projects and what have you, whenever there is an effect like a color ramp, let's see if I can find one. I think cracked concrete. Yes. So whenever you have a thing like this, and what that is a mapping node. Not a mapping node, it is a map range node. Yes. Okay, so what this is, let's plug this into the value here, take a look at this. It is doing exactly what the color ramp does, but slightly worse, only for black and white, and it gives you a lot of control. So it gives you the same control that you would have before with the color ramp, but now in a way that you can plug these into you can plug them into a node group and control them from outside the node group. And while I'm at it, let's talk about why do I use node groups. I've kind of, you can almost sort of like figure it out just from looking at everything that I've been doing so far, but this process of figuring out what works, like, I'm not always going to have a case where I know exactly that this node and this node works really well if you multiply it together with the factor of this one. I don't know that for certain all the time. And there's a lot of time that I spend figuring out each material in here, going in like this one right here, the cracked concrete. We just looked at it. Once again, here's a demonstration, by the way. You can see here it'll change. Oh, it's up here. It'll change like how much of one thing is being used by another. And as well, if we go into, say, the plaster node, specifically, hoo boy, things get a little bit more complicated. Maybe let's not take a look at that right now. But this is a very complicated system. And a lot of times, such as this right here, you might notice that this right here is basically the same thing, it looks kind of the same as this, but it's just, a different color. And you'll see that all over the place with materials. And in order to prevent myself from having to either copy paste or fully redefine this node every single time that I want to do that, I instead say, hey, I know all of the things are going to change, and in this case, it is literally just the color of it. and say, okay, let's put it all in a node group, which is something, you can pull out whatever you need, and then add the things that are the only parts that change, and now I can just change that part. And that's seen all over the place, and I have a lot of the times have made things. I say clicking on all the things. Well, I mean, like, let's look at this Cabal material right here. Like I said, I didn't actually make this node group, or material, but I did turn it into a node group, and I did add the things that change, such as the colors and all that. Whether or not it uses UVs, let's look at a part of it that isn't just that one little bit, please. Okay, yeah. So there's that, but then there's also the environment textures. So by default, it looks kind of like this, and this is sort of what happens if you look at the material when it's just at its base. And the things that do change, like for example, well, first off, the things that don't change are these textures. They always show up in all the materials, but these two do not. These change depending on where it's used. So instead of having to redo everything when all that is changing are these, 5 different properties, I can just plug in the textures that are going to change. How about I plug them into the right spot, please? I know that these are going to change. I plug them into the thing that changes, and then that's it. I don't have to do any more work, and that is one of the tenets I will get into later. But like, knowing when you can be lazy and when you can save on time is very important, because a lot of times, this map has a lot of materials, so many materials, and so the saving the amount of time that you spend per material is very important when you know that you're going to be spending at least 8 hours just doing nothing but plugging things in. And so yeah. Anyway, sorry to get philosophical on you. Let's talk about color attributes. So this is another node that we use by default. Has a few funny little things in here. If you change this to color layer name, very cool. A lot of time that there is going to be something in the alpha channel of the color attribute, and this is vertex color. So basically it corresponds to, if we look at here, it's been painted on by Bungie, and it's a little extra layer. So it's something very specific to just that object, and it's another thing that we need to pay attention to in the material. In the case of this, this is a mixing thing. So you can see here, we've got mixed nodes here, and this is a very easy material, by the way. And it is literally, at the end of the day, how about I don't mess up the material? So what it is that it is literally just like around the edges, it's this dirt stuff, but for the most part, it's this debris. And it is just mixing them together. So that's all that this is doing, is that it's just taking these two and it's mixing them based on the alpha here, our vertex color. So yeah, that's a good demonstration of the mix node actually being used in property and all of that. If you want to get a little fancier with it, you might notice that there's this lovely channel here. This is our 3 different, or our 2 different sort of color baked channels. And they have different things on it. But this top one, once again, is that mixing channel. And so what you could do is that you could take it over here like this. This is a principle that I will talk about in more detail in the next part of this tutorial, which talks about specifically just terrain, because there's some quirks with that. So we take this and we pull out our mix node here. We set that to multiply, and we plug that into here. And now when I multiply it, it's going to sort of change it, and it's going to look like that. And now when we take a look here, it's going to be mostly multiplying that. And that makes sense, because if you look at this, this is a very gray texture. And we want to have more of the dirt around instead of it looking like there's nothing being mixed there at all. And so what we're going to do, because we don't care too much about like performance. By the way, color ramps are very performance heavy. That's why it's kind of frowned upon to use them, but at the same time, I don't really care. It's just easier, and at the end of the day, it just looks okay. But we're going to do that, and we're going to pull that up. And you can see there, it's going to start mixing. But because we now have a thing multiplying in here, you can now see it's going to add a little bit more detail. And we can even take away if we wanted to I'll show you what that looks like. Sort of like that, you know? But that will make the transition between the two of them more clear, and it looks a little nicer. Yeah, there you go. So yeah, so that's our little mixed nodes and vertex color type thing. I might actually keep it sort of like that. That looks pretty good. And it mixes nicely together. Yeah, that's what we're looking for. All right. Yeah, nice. All right. So yeah, that's that. Let's also talk about UVs. Where would be a good case of UVs? Looking at the map. Well, I guess let's just start back at the rock. Can I not be an isometric, please? Okay. So, UV map. This is another very important thing. It looks kind of strange, and most of the time you don't see it. But in the case of something that's metal, which might not exist on this map, there's sometimes channels sort of like vertex color in there, and it's just more things used to mix things and change how they work in the material. And I will have an example of that later in the video once we get into metal. Because I do have some very specific examples that I want to go over. But I think that's all we can talk about on this map. So, you know what? Let's go talk about metal now. If I open up my projects here, you might notice that I have a lot of maps. This is all just maps and big projects. So if we open up the newest map that I'm currently working on, this is Cirrus Plaza. Let's see that. So this is Cirrus Plaza. It is the new Crucible map on Neomuna. There's going to be plenty of examples on here, and I should know a little bit more about everything that goes on in this map because I am actively working on it. And we're sort of halfway in between here, so it'll be a good example, and I can show you the actual process. So why don't I go ahead and close this instance of Alcahest and open up the other version of Alcahest that has some goofy properties which I will not go into detail about. And let's open up the map. All right. Come on, you can do it. Okay, I guess I'll load Alcahest into position while we wait. Let's set up our options. And let's do that. Okay. So, all right. This map has lots of complicated materials in here. Doesn't look completely game accurate in Alcahest yet because I don't have the new fancy one set up yet. Well, I do have it, but I don't have it set up for what I'm working on now. But as you can see, it's kind of a map. So let's go back here. Come on. Come on, Blender. Sometimes moving my camera around does it, but 8,000 materials. This is a very, very heavy map. Come on, you can do it. I guess it is loading the skybox as well at the same time. This is a nice little behind-the-scenes tour of my actual workflow, because generally I haven't touched about it yet, but back here, I try to do all the background things first because the materials are going to be less complicated. Like if I take a look at this right here, it is, if I take a look at something like less complicated, this one, it is literally just this and this, and I should probably plug that into roughness, now that I think about it. Okay, are we loaded? I think we're loaded. Okay, so, um, right, we were talking about UVs. Okay, let's fly around here. Let's see. This will have UVs. All right. So this right here, lovely little post thing, and I love how my performance goes back to being amazing the second I deload the map. All right. So UV map. We take a look at this. We take a look at a material that isn't just the little dots. This one. You're gonna notice that there's some funkiness going on here already, and this is when you see stuff like this where it isn't just like that rock before where it was all over the place. When it looks like this, you know that there's actually some mixing going on. I didn't do any of it here, but you'll see in a little bit. Let's find a different. You know where I just used it? I just used it on this right here. Okay. So, we hop on down to here. You can already see where this is going, but in the UV map, we take a look at this. I keep clicking on the ones that are the little trim bits. Okay. So once again, things are mixed in weird and funky ways. And there is a funny little thing. A lot of times when it's like this, it means that it's gonna be a four-way switch shader. And basically the material is separated in the UVs by different colors, and that will determine what color the thing is. So by default, we pull out our four-way switch shader. It looks like this. We pull it out, and you can see here it is two distinct colors. And in fact, if I unhide this and take a look at all these components, you can see here it's three colors, and sometimes, you know, you've got upwards of four. So we take a look at which each of these colors are. In this case, in Alcahest, if we take a look at this area, which I think is over here, yep, it's just two distinct colors. And if we take a look back of how I've implemented it, you'll see that I accordingly change it to the two different colors. All right, so let's see, what can I talk about also on this map? I guess let's go through the process of taking a look at a material like this. This is what I was working on right as I start the map here. And we have lots of funky little channels here. And I already have a good idea of what this channel is going to look like already by default. And we're going to want to work on this one first. Okay, so we got some weird looking lines. Those weird looking lines have an alpha channel. We got this right here, which is a very common trim texture thing for details and all that. Basically, it's just a noise texture, which I haven't even talked about. Hang on. Noise texture. Sometimes you have textures like this, and if we go ahead and separate color. I know this is just a stream of consciousness, and I think I mentioned at the start of the video I made a script for this. I've thrown that out of the window by now. Anyways, you take a look at this here, and it's got some funky looking noise, and you know, you got some different stuff here and nothing in the blue channel. It's a texture that we use like it's used all over the place. I shouldn't delete it because I will actually try to incorporate it, but sometimes that isn't good enough. And so instead you can pull out a noise texture. And it's got lots of little settings here, and you can change how it looks and how rough it is and all that stuff, and you can change all its properties, and they've changed this since the last time I've looked at it, so I don't remember what everything does, but you can get a lot out of a noise texture, obviously. So if the effect you want to do can't be processed in the game, with just the textures that you have. Chances are it's because they used a noise texture and that's not really shown. So yeah, there you go. All right, let's actually define this material. So first off, let's look over here and aha. All right, we got some funky little dots. This tells us a lot about the material. So you see here there's some long ones and there's some short ones. And that's very telling because if we look back here, you got some long ones and you got some short ones. Let's separate the color of this. All right, you got the short ones, and then you got the long ones, and you got the alpha of the short ones, and then once again in this alpha channel you got the alpha of the long ones. You got 4 channels, 4 different functions. These, by the way, I can tell are ambient inclusion because it's nice and bright and it's got a little bit of shadow. So after that we already talked about that. This texture right here kind of appears all over the place. I don't use it. I just ignore it. We got some more, looks like some more noise. Might not use that one. And then we got the normals for our short ones and our long ones. And looking here, this right here, this sort of thing where it's like 2 different types of patterns or what have you, this screams UVs and color attributes here. So this is exactly what I'm looking at. So let's take a look at our color attributes first. See what's in here. So no results found, and if we check here, there's nothing. It's not a color attribute, which means it's probably a UV. So UV map, let's take a look. We do have a UV, obviously, and would you look at that if I go ahead and separate XYZ, which is different from separating color because a UV, as you can see here by the purple line, it is a vector, not a color. Okay, we got a gradient. We've got a very clear and distinct line here, and nothing on the Z. So this right here is corresponding to here, as you can see there. So I'm seeing white is equal to the little short ones, and then the black is equal to the long ones. So now we can separate that. One thing I've also noticed is that this is still kind of gradiented. We don't want that, so instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to color ramp. That also clamps this up nice. And I am going to go like that. And that smooths out all of these gradients. So now we are going to go take a look back here. And I am going to make some pull out some mix nodes. Alright, this is like the perfect material for what I wanted to talk about. Okay, so once again, red and green channels here. We got short, we got long. We want to make sure that we're keeping these equal, or we're keeping these in the right direction, and we want to make sure that we're keeping these in the right order. So later when we're mixing things together down here, we want to make sure that short and long go in the same channel. And because looking at this UV here, it's very clearly that white is the short, black is the long. And white, of course, means that it's yes, black means no, or like that it's mixed. You'll see in a minute. I'm going to cross the channels like that so that the green one, which once again is the long, is corresponding to the black. So we plug that in. It's kind of hard to tell, but you can see here that that is what we're looking for. And once again, I'm going to do the same thing now with the alphas. And we're going to plug that in like that. And so now the alpha event, long there, short there, this is looking correct. And we know this is ambient inclusion, so I'm going to plug that in there. And we know that this is alpha, so I'm going to plug that in there. So when I plug this in here, it's looking really weird. And that is because over in the material settings here, viewport display, you want to make sure that this is set to either alpha clip. If it is a black and white alpha like this, in this case, I'm going to put it. But for a transparent material like glass or other things that are sort of half transparent, you want to use alpha blend. And we're going to go ahead and turn shadow mode to alpha clip. You don't have to worry about that if you're in cycles. If you're in EV, you do want to turn that on. And generally, even though that I am heavily setting up all of my maps for cycles, I do like to make sure that I keep shadow mode turned on as well for the people that want to use EV. All right. And so now we're going to go back here, and you're going to notice that there's still some yellow stuff, and that's because we have another material to work on later. So we're going to ignore that for now. We're going to keep going once again. Oh, that's because I... Okay, that makes more sense. All right. Down here, we've got our two things. Short there, long there. Plug that in. Let's confirm. Yes, that is how we want it to look. We plug that into our normal. And there we go. Last but not least, if we take a look at our material here, it's just this greenish, whatever, teal. I don't know what to call that color. And it's just using exactly what I did here, which is just our yellowish texture. And we're combining those two colors together. So I'm going to go ahead and actually lift this entire thing and shove it in here. And I might as well get rid of that. And we're going to plug that in. And I want to brighten that up because that's kind of how it looks in the other side. And there we go. It looks just about how we want it to. Now, you might be screaming right now, oh, hey, you didn't use these too. Yeah, I don't really care. This one's just a noise texture. It's used on occasion. I don't really see a difference or see where it's used in a lot of these materials. Like almost everything has it. And to be honest, it doesn't really show up anywhere, so I don't really care. So it's just sort of a noise. And once again, I have no idea what this texture is used for, so we ignored that too. And there we go. Looking nice. Although there is a little bit of clipping. And to be honest, that's just because I'm on clip start 0.1 instead of like 1 meter. 1 meter. So that clipping goes away, but at the same time, I like looking at things with detail, so I usually just keep it at 0.1 meters, and that means I can get right up close to material without it starting to clip. So, yeah. Obviously, if you're doing camera work or what have you, and as well, this doesn't show up in cycles. But if you see Z clipping like that, just turn your clip start up, and it usually goes away. On occasion. Anyways, all right. So, I guess let's just keep going. Keep doing materials. I think I've done everything in this room. Ah, no, okay. Let's take a look up. Look it up here. All right. So, we have 3 things here. This is a very simple material, specifically because I've already done it. And we'll take a quick pop inside and see what's going on inside there. So you'll see here, this is the Neomuna Universal Node. This is what I use all the time for this kind of thing. Plug them in there and boom, it looks like kind of what we want. And we will check to see the colors on there. It looks like it's just a nice light gray that we all know and love. I just go like that, plug that in, and that is looking correct. I wasn't looking at the right thing, was I? Oh yeah, I was looking at that one up there, but it looks the same. Okay. So, inside this node right here is a lot. Let's try to go through it. So, first off, let's take a look at this right here. By the way, I haven't mentioned it yet in this cut of the video. By the way, I've tried to record this several times, and so far this is the most successful one, which is why I keep going. This right here is a remnant of my time with other different kinds of Destiny objects. So specifically, entities have MRCs a lot of time, like enemies and what have you. It's an MRC, stands for metal roughness and color, which is like ambient occlusion. I don't know where the C comes from. Anyways, um, I always call these sort of channel packed textures MRCs. They really aren't, but that's what I call them. But at the end of the day, what it is that if I separate color here, um, it is this right here, which is sort of like an edge wear type look. Um, this right here is ambient occlusion, and then blue is like an extra level of detail or what have you. And in fact, I have things for all of those, so you can kind of see the edge wear already in there. And as well, if I turned on the alt mode, you can see as well, you can have that same thing and have control over that. And that's kind of what I like to do with my material nodes is make it so that they're universal. You can change kind of whatever property you want about it. In fact, I do want to increase the edge up to that so you can see it. And stuff like that. And oh boy, this is kind of complicated. Oh yeah, I didn't mention before, but the mix color node is actually just a mix node in general, and there's 3 different flavors of it. Mix float in this case, it changes, it just mixes between one number and a different number, or whatever you plug into it. Here we have our starting, like thing. And the texture I don't use down here. This is a part that I don't use right here for this material. This is sort of like a grain. I don't know why I'm explaining. Oh yeah, I don't know why I'm explaining, but it's sort of like a grain, so I keep that in there. But if you look closer, it is just taking the channels out and plugging them into different places. And it's really hard to explain all the things that are going on here, especially since this material is definitely not the best to describe because it's also a compound material. And by that, I mean there are 3 different materials that are built into this one because it's easier than having 3 separate things for me. Although if by that, I should have probably added all of these into one, but I'm not. I don't know. It makes sense to me because all of these technically all derive from the same thing from DSC. In my mind, I don't know. The end result you should take from this, by the way, is that everything I do is completely arbitrary. And yeah, anyways, but as you can see here, it's literally just mixing things together. Mixes, more mixes, and sometimes some multiplies as well to get all that detail. And yeah, it's just more mixes sometimes. So like sometimes the blue channel is used for different things. Like the blue is either used for that color, and then other cases it's used for alpha, which is why we have this down here, which corresponds to the input over here that is use B as alpha. And as well, sometimes that alpha is not inverted, and sometimes it is, so I've got that. And I multiply it and clamp it up to a point so that I know for a fact that it is a fully black and white alpha channel. And then I think the rest of this is just for stuff and other parts here that we have. Yes, okay. Cool. That was more complicated than it should have been, but end result is that once again, the things that I want to really bang into your head is that I design these things, these node groups, in a way that I can use them everywhere, or like everywhere applicable, and they have all the options that I need, and it's just minimizing work. Like right here, I have these 3 textures, and instead of doing this entire mess of stuff up here, I can just plug it into the node group, change whatever properties I need to change, and that's it. Hell, I mean, I could have probably... You've seen already that it sometimes uses the 4-way switch shader. And in this case, it technically does, but not really, or not in a way that matters. And I could even build this in, sort of like what I did with the metal node here. Yes, this thing, which is sort of my magnum opus. It looks nice and tidy. It is really complicated, and I love it to death. All right. Um, I told myself I didn't want to turn this video into a massive rant fest, but here we are. So let's say I guess keep going. Try to find a nice funky material to do. You know what? Maybe I'll go over here to this. Okay. Let's do this right here. Hey, future Gerb Snail here. I spend a lot of time on this. It's pretty valuable knowledge because you do see me sort of working through the process of these very complicated materials, but it definitely devolves, and I'm not going to spend any time editing it down, so if you want to skip all that, go to like 145-ish in the video. Yeah. It was a lot. It's already had most of it done, I think. Oh, wow, yeah, okay, I guess never mind. But one thing right here that it hasn't had done are these funky materials right here. So you can see here that there's two of the same thing right here. And that always to me screams that it is a emissive transparent material, or just transparent material in general. There's always two copies of them, and it's something to do with the fact that actually I'm not going to pretend to understand why it's there, but that's a fact of life. And generally, what I do is that I know for a fact that in cycles that it prioritizes things higher up in the list. So I will generally take the bottom one and add a transparent alpha blend, none. There we go. And we're just going to work with one of these instead of doing it twice in a row. Now let's take a look at that same material now in Alcast. Oh god, my camera. Okay. This right here is what we're looking at. Okay. I see how it's kind of working, except I don't. Well, first step is always to take a look at your channels. So, separate color. We're going to get rid of the GURB BSDF because we know we aren't using it in this material. We're going to plug this in. And okay. Oh, I see how this works now. Oh, I hate that I know how I see this. Okay. All right. So immediately off the bat, we know we've got this purple color. By the way, very thin. If you don't have it already, you should get Windows Power Toys. And what Windows Power Toys is, one of the features that it does, it adds a lot of things, but one of them, the one that I use all the time, especially now that I have Alcahest, is Windows Shift C, and it's a color picker. And so I'm able to just pull the hex value of that and immediately shove that into Blender. So plug that into the hex immediately there. Same thing, I'm going to pull this yellow. All right. So we know off the bat that this one corresponds with this right here. And I think that this needs to saturate a little bit. And then this one needs to saturate, and then I don't know. We'll mess around with that a little bit later once we oh, it needs to be a lot more purple. Yeah. Okay. Okay. I don't know how well we're going to be able to match this effect in here, but I think I see how it does it. So, so if we take a look at this first channel here, it's this like snaky pattern. And when you take it along there, you can see how it sort of wraps around like this. However, if you take a thing like this, and by the way, with a color ramp, you can just make little segments. So if we take a segment like this, yeah, there you go. And then now we just need to add. Not add. Okay. Add to the end. No. Okay. Hmm. How about multiply? Oh, okay. Okay. That's not how we're doing this. This is the challenge. Maybe it's time for a map range. And I'm specifically taking you along because this is a complicated material doing some complicated math, and I think that it's important that you can see what I am doing. Um, Actually, no. What this would be, math node. Remember when I said that I really only use these ones? How about um, let's pull this. Okay. What's the difference between that? Okay. Interesting. And then smooth maximum. Okay, I don't think that's what I'm looking for. Hmm. Yeah, no, I think it's less than and greater than. I think is what we're looking for. This is some complicated math, and I should probably cut it out, but no. So combined between this here, we're gonna get the values. Okay. And then get this map range. And we attach that here. So the thought right now is that I'm trying to replicate this right here, this little bit. Because there's, as you can see here, it's like a little segment that travels around on the board and eats the little dudes. And my thought is that we take it here. Max 0.086. What does that do? I don't think this is what I'm hoping to do. This is so sad. But this is the game that we play. This is figuring out nodes, and I wish I knew the answer to this, but I don't. Okay. Okay. I think I see how to do this. So we're going to take our greater than. We're going to have two of them. We're going to add them together with a math node, which we already have one. We're going to add them together. And now what we're going to do is that we're going to plug in that threshold like that. We're going to go like that, and we're going to clamp that as well. And now we're going to change this to multiply. Now when I change this, that's not what I'm trying to do. See, I need to single it out. Oh, wait, no, 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 no. Less than. And now when I change this ever so slightly. Aha! Okay, okay, you see this? All right, all right, all right. And now we get a value node back out. And then we get a math node. Add. And so we take that. We take this first value here. And then we take this value here. Now we can add that. And now when we do that, it doesn't work. Okay. Multiply. Oh, this is so sad. Hang on, what if we just directly go like this? Well, it needs to be between 0 and 1. That part's obvious. Okay, you see that? There we go. That's what we're looking for. Okay, so now the next challenge is to make it so that when this increases over time, once it hits this point right here, it goes back to 0. Or it goes back to 1. And the way that I would do that, hmm, said I wouldn't do it like that. Instead, I would pull up the graph editor. Hello, Blender? Oh no. Okay, we're good, we're good. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Okay. Well, viewport, please. Oh no, now I've lost everything. Oh no. All right. Oh, this is so sad. Here I was trying to do a cool little maneuver. Now let's get back to where we were before. We're looking at this right here. Yes. Okay. All right. And let's change this to the graph editor. Okay. Okay. So we're going to right click this and say insert keyframe. And now this is a value that can be controlled over time. I'm not going to go into actual keyframing today. I'm just going to show you how you can animate a thing. So how about we go to cycles? And cycles, it is a repeated thing. Actually, no. Let's do generator. No, well. Ah, okay. Okay, I see that. It's in function. Yes. Okay, that's what we're looking for. Tangent. Tangent is what we're looking for. And as well, we're going to want to add another modifier that is limits. That is 1. Okay, so this is too fast. Not changing the amplitude. Ah, here we go. Okay. All right. That's what we're looking for. But tangent is not quite what I think we wanted. Normalized sign? What does that look like? Oh, okay. That's what. Hmm. Yeah, this is definitely outside the scope of this video. Cycles. Okay. Built-in function. I mean, what does it do? Yeah, that's kind of what I expected. Yeah, and we don't want our game to run backwards. I guess I guess tangent's the way to go. And once again, let's add our modifier of limits. 0 to 1. Okay, there we go. Okay. Actually, wait, does it? Well, the whole thing rotates as well. That's gonna be a fun thing to add, but that shouldn't be too bad. Hmm. It definitely resets a lot quicker than tangent function, like what we're doing here. Hmm. Yeah, what can a generator do? Well, I've done it messed up. I shouldn't have clicked that button. Okay. Well, I'm definitely going to cut out a lot of this, but I'm keeping it on camera for the sake of keeping it on camera. Yes. Okay, that's what I was. No, that's not what I was looking for. Damn. Right now, I'm just trying to figure out what's the best way of a repeating pattern that does this. I got an A in differential equations. I should know this. Why did I? This isn't differential equations, man. Goes from 0 to 1. Is it counter system? Hmm. What kind of things do we have in here? Ah. Uh, so hang on, what does this do? That's what we're looking for. Okay. The wrap node. The more you know. This is we're learning at the same time. So now. Yeah. Sweet. Okay. Gonna make it a little slower. And there we go. Okay. Cool. We learn. Okay. So now let's get back to this. Now that we have this, this wasn't ended, it didn't end up being that complicated. I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of these little dots. I don't really route my nodes. I probably should, given how much I use them. But I don't. But I do like to clean them up a little bit at least. So there we go. It's a little bit more organized. All right. So now that we have that part figured out, we also have these. And these can probably just be multiplied by this value over time. Let's check to see what that does. No, that is not what we're trying to do here. Okay. Um, hang on. This by this. What does that look like? Oh, okay, okay. We're gonna multiply off of that, actually. We're gonna take that, we're gonna multiply it by that, which means that this. Yes, okay. That's what we want. Because our little square here is eating up all the little shapes. All right. So now let's add it to this right here. So I'm gonna add another mix and we're going to add this. So now we've got our little shapes. I think they're a slightly different color, I want to say. Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're like that actually. And then on top of all of that is our blue. All right. And so finally, now that we have this, and let's just confirm. Yep. Ah, you know what? This kind of bothers me. What happens if I color ramp it? Can I get rid of the... No, I really can't. Okay. I guess there is a reason why... there is a reason why those little lines got kept in. Okay. All right. So we got that. And so now what we're going to do is that this whole thing is an emission. It is transparent. And we add them together like that. And then we change this to alpha blend and no shadows. And there we go. And you can see as well, you can set, it'll be rendered in a way that the shininess will still sort of appear over the other one because the shininess comes from the screen below. And we can as well change this to be a little bit more. Yeah, okay. So there we go. This has been complicated materials with GURPS now. Okay. Final thing here is that you might have noticed that this right here rotates over time. And the way that we're going to accomplish that is that we're going to take our scrolling value here. We are going to do Control T, get this nice and up, and it is just rotating on the Z axis. So we are going to do combine XYZ. We're going to plug that into there. And we are just going to add that into there and see how that does. Now that's a little too fast. So we're going to take a multiply. And we're going to take that over here. And now we're going to see. See, that's probably good. All right. Um, oh, but you see it's being spun from the center point. Okay. Well, we can change that pretty easily. This is just 0.5 and 0.5. And so now... Hmm. Usually that does work. Is it object UV mapping? Move that down to the center of the object. I mean, obviously we'll need to scale it. Oh, I don't want to do that. No, that's definitely not right. Okay, you know what? That's fine. It's not rotating from the right spot, but I don't know exactly how to change it in a way that'll make it right without editing the UVs, so there we go. Okay, so now let's put that down. I apologize, by the way, if you ever hear my roommates now in the video. They're better than my previous roommates, but they sure do make some noises sometimes. I have no idea how sensitive this microphone is to the room. They're straight up having a conversation. Okay, let's take a look at this other one. Because why not? And in fact, we've gone on such a long tirade that might as well, you know? Okay, same deal. Transparent. I know I'll be editing this down quite a bit, though. Okay. Let's take a look. Oh boy. This is actually not that bad. Hmm. Okay, it's just a scrolling texture. Let's hit Shift H here. Yep, just got a scrolling texture. These things seem to disappear over time. Okay, that doesn't seem too bad. Let's take a look at what we got. Alpha channel is that little square there. So let's first, okay. So, this is a good time to talk about this right here. Repeat, extend, clip, and mirror. So, in most cases, you can just keep repeat because it'll tile, but in this case, we want to extend. And as well, it is a little bit wider. Yeah, that looks good. And then we want it to be in the center of the screen. So we're just going to be editing it like this. It's kind of off to the side. It doesn't quite matter, but might as well make it kind of accurate, you know? Okay. It's sort of like that. Why not? Okay. Yeah. All right. So we got that little part figured out. That is this little square in the center. Okay. Now we got the rest of the texture to worry about. So straight away, this needs to rotate like this. So negative 90 degrees so that it's upright. Looks like the scale's correct other than that. Let's separate color. Okay. 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 This is nice and easy. Let's pull this blue. And let's do a mix. Here we go. Mix color. That blue. And then this purple. There we go. Color ramp. There's definitely, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about interpolation. There's different ways to interpolate. In this case, what I'm seeing here are these sort of hard ledges and then super long contrails. And you get that usually with a B-spline. Um, but instead what I'm going to do is that. Okay. That's kind of what we're looking for. It needs to be a little bit closer. Okay. Okay, that's looking good. All right. Now we got this. Is there no difference between the stars and the hexagons? Interesting. Okay. Result, factor. Let's pull this color right here. Interesting. Okay. So we're gonna mix color with that. It's like a reddish. No, it's a very hot pink. Okay. Well, that is a hot pink. Now we're going to take a similar thing from what we did with the other material. Sorry, I should probably be speaking out loud of what I'm doing here more. But, well, definitely not. Actually, wait, hang on. I forgot to actually look and see what this is doing over time. I think it's just doing this. Oh, it is. Okay, hang on. I think we don't need any of this. We need a map range node. Yep, okay. Cool. Okay, so we do that. We don't need any of that. And now what we do is that once again, we take insert keyframe, click on that, pull this up, add modifier generator. I think that was the speed at what it was. So finally, what we're going to do is that we're going to put that in like that. Okay. Actually, wait. No, we're not going to do it like that. We're going to do it like this. So over time, those are going to sort of separate like that. And we're going to mix that into here like this. And then finally, there we go. Hmm. I think I think I've done this wrong. I think I want that, and then I want this to be mixed like this, so that that layer is on top of everything else. Okay, and then finally, this is scrolling. It's scrolling to the left, so that means we need to insert a single keyframe right here. And let's take a look at that. Add modifier generator negative 0.01. See how that goes. Okay, that's kind of good enough. I don't know how much people care about their accuracy of their things here. Whew. And then finally, we need to add the rest of this. So that's all nice and dandy. Let's take this, mix that with this. With the alpha channel. And then add our, oh, that's just white. Okay. Okay. And then mission, transparent, add alpha blend. There we go. I do want to brighten these up a bit. This is something that I'll definitely change once we're in cycles. Okay, I think that's enough of that for now. This is the idea of how it's gonna go for a lot of your things, though. It's just like take a look at what it looks like in Alkahest, and then go down here. It's like, okay, I see these textures here. I know that it's something I can put into the universal, um, although not completely. So it's just like that. Plug that into there. Plug that into this. In this case, I know blue is alpha. I know it doesn't look like it. Hang on, if I just display color, you can see there. That's what that looks like. So use B as alpha, alpha clip. And then to add the emission, I'll just add shader, emission, and plug that into the strength. And then I will change that to sort of like an orange color, sort of like what they had here. And then as well, I will add a math node and multiply. All right, there we go. These are gray. And it's literally the same thing for the one on the bottom. I don't know why it's a different material other than Blender, or more specifically, not Blender, Bungie being weird. But there we go. Okay. Yeah, literally the same material. I don't know why they're different. Okay. So, repeat that a bajillion times. I'm going to insert a clip of me going through some other materials here And yeah, that's the map. Um, yeah, I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry that this became a rant fest and sort of how the rest of my videos go, especially with this, but it's really hard to talk about things like this, especially since I have so much time and experience, and I keep thinking about that one comic where it's just like, oh, everybody knows a little bit about this, right? And it's just completely overestimating. Um, this is a difficult thing to do. Like, even beyond the whatever crazy madness I just did with that, with the math nodes and all that, figuring out all the little bits and details and how things mix together. It is a complicated process. And like I said, I highly encourage, if you're having trouble with figuring out how to start it, how to keep going, it is just take a look at all the channels that you have. Look at the UVs, look at the color attributes, and stare at it in Alcahest. Look at the different channels, and just start picking around with what you know and what you think you can do. And you'll quickly realize that this isn't that hard, especially once you know how to make certain concessions, like, oh, this isn't completely game accurate, but it's close enough. Sort of like this right here. I have no idea how to make these things truly game accurate, but it's close enough. And there's little rough details in there, and it's not perfect, but it's definitely a balance of how much will the person using this map care, and how much do you care, and how close can you get it. So yeah. Anyways, I'm not going to say pretend there's a cool outro because there is more video to go over, but yeah, I guess I'll move on to the next section and stop ranting. Alright, so before I actually get to those examples, I would like to teach you three very important lessons. First one, pattern recognition. Second one, knowing when you can be lazy. And the third one, always checking the extra channels. Now, I've already been kind of going into these and doing these just subconsciously, but I thought I would overtly say what these are and what that means very specifically. So, to start, let's talk about pattern recognition. So, you might notice in plants like these or what have you, I already have a node group for them, but knowing when that applies. So, for example, we have these three textures, and then we go to a different channel on that, and we have those same three textures, and then we go to a different one, and then we have those three textures. And this is the kind of things that you want to see, is knowing, hey, this is the same thing as this up here. It's the same texture, it's just, or the same channels, it's just a different texture for a different, like, slightly different thing. And same thing, you look at a rock, and then you can immediately tell, hey, look, this texture right here has been used before. It's the same kind of thing as a different thing over here. You look at it, and it's slightly different, but it's the same. And that is a lesson that I want to teach you right here, right now, because this will save you so much time. Is that Bungie is lazy when it comes to their materials. They have, like, one kind of thing, and they will apply it to a whole bunch of different things. I should probably have said that in more words, but you know what I mean. There's so many of these cases, like these wall materials. Technically speaking, this wall is the same as these walls, and it's the same as, like, that wall. And it all looks different, but at the same time, it's just, oh god, I accidentally pressed the wrong button there. Okay, well, I guess we have mountains in the background. I mean, same thing with the mountains, too. The mountains are slightly different, but they're the same. It's very confusing to say out loud, but end of the day, what you need to know is, or what you need to learn is to take a look at a big set of textures like this and immediately know how you can apply that and what to do with it. And whether that be, figuring out, oh, is this a diffuse, is this a roughness, is it a normal, or what have you, or down to even specifics, like, even if I didn't have this already set up, I knew for a fact, just by looking at this texture alone, that it is going to be using the rusty metal node that I've already set up. Stuff like that. So, the next skill that we want to know is knowing when you can be lazy. The biggest example and something that I've included into my workflow permanently is the use of node groups. So, knowing when I can be lazy and just slap in nodes just like this. You know, oh, I've already made these kind of windows before. I will just shove it into the Windows node. I've already made plants before. I'll shove it into the plant node. Um, and as well, one of the big things is that I personally have done so many maps at this point that there's probably a similar map to the one that you're trying to set up. As of making this video, I haven't done Hive yet, but even then, there are examples out there of Hive materials that you can go look at. But um, that kind of pattern recognition and knowing, okay, we've already done this before, that means that, you know, you can take a look at that map and you can see the nodes that I use and you can figure out how I use those nodes and what those textures line up to. And if you can figure that out, it's going to save you so much time. As well, things like Cabal materials. I talked about this in the stream when I was doing it. Um, you know, Judd already made literally game accurate, perfect Cabal materials. And so I never have to redefine all of those things because I know it already exists. So knowing when you can be lazy, knowing when you can sit back and not actually do any of that work is a very important very important thing. Finally, knowing when you can be lazy, or not, we already covered that. Always check the extra channels. That refers to stuff like this, the color attribute. I talked about this earlier where there's extra things happening in the color attributes and such. And talking about like the things on Neomuna. Not everything is going to be directly in the textures. Like with this, you could see that it was being mixed together by the color attributes. So making sure you always check those because they are going to be something that if there is something in the color attribute, it's almost always going to be used in some way, and you need to be aware of it. So with that being said, let's get to those examples I promised you. All right, so we've got some examples here. These are all from the Widow's Court map. So we got some plants or something. I don't know what that is yet. We got a rock, got a weird looking trim thing, some more weird looking trim thing. And we have a completed model. This is to show sort of some more advanced stuff at the end. Anyways, I've ordered these from like easiest to hardest. So let's get started with this plant here. And if we take a look at the textures here, we don't really have too much. We just have 1 and 2. And okay, well, this is obviously a normal map, and this one is that. Then, what do we see here? Anything on the channel? Nope. Okay. So we're just going to take this and plug it into roughness because, once again, obviously we could confirm this, but this is what our roughness channel is. Or it's just, yeah, you know what I mean. We've gone over that. Okay, we got the leaves. And once again, this is very, very similar, except now it's a little bit more advanced because if you take a look at this and if I preview that channel, it's completely black and white, like no gray areas or anything. This is clearly an alpha channel. So plug that in, and then put that in the roughness. There we go. We have plant. All right, moving on to here. Ooh, what is going on with this? Well, it's another plant. So now we have a little bit more complicated. In fact, I think I might start with a different one. And no, maybe I should start with that one. I want to try to find a good majority of it. Okay. So we got this weird looking texture here. We got our diffuse, we got something channel packed, and we've got normal. So we know normal is normal. We know this is diffuse. That is straight away. Now we see this right here, and clearly this is not any of those. So let's pull out a separate color. This is always our friend. And we're going to start looking at what is included here. So you got this, you got one of these, and we got one of that. All right. So, if I were to personally guess, this would be unused in this example. It's sort of like a weird mixing thing. We're gonna kind of ignore this where it's hard to explain, but like where it's got this weird smooth bumpiness. You'll see it on the rock later, but we're gonna ignore that. We do use that channel for mixing, and what that means, I'll get more into that kind of detail in the terrain video. It's just separate. This looks like AO, or kind of, yeah. This is, I mean, compared to this is definitely roughness. Like, we'll plug this into roughness. This is a little bit darker than your standard ambient occlusion, but that's kind of what it is. So we're going to plug it into there. So now when we plug it all together, yep, that looks like a plant. Okay. Next, let's move on to some other materials. We got similar deal. Got that's clearly diffuse, that's clearly normal. Let's see what we're looking at right here. Okay. And once again, separate color. All right, that's clearly our alpha. This is that. This is our roughness. This is definitely AO. Once again, yeah, it's about what we'd expect. Okay. By the way, you should know this. Once again, this is not a beginner tutorial, but this is what the default material looks like, and if you have something with alpha and you don't have it in the settings to make it like alpha blend or alpha clip, do that. Personally, I've started just putting everything on alpha blend and mixing it like that because I am a cycles guy, which means that everything is alpha blend by default. There is no alpha clip with cycles, so might as well tune it to alpha blend. But that is for other more advanced discussion. Okay, so now we've noticed pattern recognition. That's rule number, or lesson number 1, pattern recognition. We've seen these textures before. In fact, it's the exact same ones, except slightly different, but it's the same general design. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put them in a node group. So I'm going to pull up these tabs here, reorder it, and we know this is our, I call it an MRC, some people call it environment texture, whatever, but label your things correctly in the way that you would remember. And I'm going to just call it new plants, because I do already have, oh, I guess I didn't, okay, I can't just call that plant then. I did have the material in there previously. In fact, you know, if I clean up my, yeah, that seems about right. Okay. So now we've got our plant node, and now for every time that we see this right here, we can just go ahead, get rid of our BSDF. Even though that it is a very simple material, it is still nice to just plug in what you have, just kind of plug and chug, and just, it just works. And there we go. Now we've got our leaves, and all of our materials are done. Very nice. Okay, so moving on, we've got a rock. And the rock's a little bit more complicated. As you can see, this material is very, very complicated, but we'll get to why that is in a moment. But first, we have a normal. We have another normal. We have a green channel pack looking texture. And we have 2 diffuses. Okay. So, let's start with our packed channel. Let's see what we have here. We've got this. We got this. We've got nothing in the blue. So, this right here is ambient occlusion, without a doubt. This is exactly what you're looking for. We're going to plug that right in. Now this one, I don't really use it. I'm going to be honest. I usually don't use with this, but it's just an example. Sometimes channels are here. I don't even know what they're for. It's probably like some kind of edge thing to make it look a little bit better around the edges. I'm not quite sure. But we are safe to generally ignore it. So if we take a look at this here, obviously rock We have, ooh, we got some more ambient occlusion. We got this, and then we've got this. Once again, this is a mixing texture. We're going to get to what that is in a second. So we're going to take this. We're going to get a math node because, so we want this output and this output. We want both of those to exist. And generally, we're going to want to do that with a multiply. And because these are black and white, we can get away with a math node instead of a color node. So multiply those together. Now you can see, and the way that you can really tell is that if I take a texture mapping here, you can see how that works. So take those, we plug those into ambient occlusion. And there we go. All right, next let's take a look at our base color. By the way, just in general, most of the time, the diffuse or base color, whatever you want to call it, that's going to be the most complicated part of it, because a lot of time you've got like different textures you need to mix and different channels and things to multiply together. In this case, it's pretty easy. So as you can see, here is our multiply, but clearly this is too much. But we see back here, we've got this funny little mixing type channel. So we're going to plug that in, and that looks just about right. And in fact, if you compare it to in-game, it's just about perfect. This is probably how they do it in some fashion. They might use a mix or lerp or whatever they call it. But anyways, here we go. Here is our rock, except we don't have our roughness yet. So once again, roughness, it is almost always just diffuse, but desaturated. So plug that directly in. Boom, you got a rock. Yeah. All right. So this one right here, we got some funky looking materials here. We got this, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this. And it's a trick question because this right here is Cabal architecture. And once again, this is down to pattern recognition to know that this is Cabal architecture. Like this texture is very specifically Cabal. And as well, you can generally tell from the design or what have you. But we have made, or more specifically, Judd has made a perfect Cabal environment texture, like, or material node thing. Completely perfect, exactly what you need. There is no reason for you ever to really work on Cabal materials because we've already got it done. And so it's kind of a trick question, but this is with all of these materials, actually. I've already made nodes for every single one of these, for every single different example and everything like that. And generally speaking, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. And, you know, we've, for the most part, especially in the newer maps, I've spent a lot of time making sure that these are completely game accurate. Any of the maps that came after Alcahest will be truly perfect, or as best as I can make it. But anyways, getting back to it, in order to finish this real quick, I'm just going to pull this from the thing, but obviously there is a blend file out there with the Cabal material node. There we go. Just going to yoink that. There we go. Plug that in, and then plug in our relevant channels. So here's our environment texture, and here is our normal. Yeah. And as you can see, it's got lots of super neat and detail that, you know, takes a while to perfect, and somebody did it already. All right, moving on. We've got this right here. Once again, I do have a node for it already, but it is a good teaching example. So we got a lot of things going on in this material here. We got that, and that. But most importantly, there's no clear diffuse in this. Like, there's nothing. I guess you've got this, but this doesn't feel right. Especially if you look at the material, it's not truly that. So something's going on. So let's start pulling apart channels. I'm gonna tell you this immediately. This does something. It's just a noise texture. You can do better just by pulling out the built-in Blender noise texture, which can do basically the same thing, but just better and procedurally. So for the sake of this tutorial, I'm not making it truly perfect in the way that I would use this. So if I do need noise, I don't think I use it, just use a noise texture. All right, let's start separating some channels. That is the wrong button. Separate color, please. All right, duplicate out the nodes. So, yeah. So this is an example of material mixing. Like, if you saw what this looked like, if we pop back over into this map, here is the exact object that we are doing, or one that's very close. It's very clearly you've got just like the regular sort of rusty metal part, but then you also have the rust itself. And the way that we do that is by mixing the material together. So, going back here, let's take a look at it. But what that means is that you're going to have things like these two right here. These are the parts of the rust, whereas like things like this right here is part of the main base material. But you'll see what I mean. You'll see what I mean. Anyways, let's take a look here. Okay, we got some stuff going on. Some more stuff that looks kind of like roughness. And nothing in blue. Okay. And then over here, we got some more stuff. This looks like our rust mixing map. And we got some ambient occlusion. Once again, nothing in the blue. Okay, so from what we know immediately, we can plug this into here. And that is about it. So this right here looks kind of like our roughness, although it doesn't seem to be scaled correctly. So I'll go like that. We'll pull out our scale here. So this seems pretty good. It's not the best quality, but at the same time, if you get the nodes scaling too much, you're going to start seeing like patterns in it. So I usually keep it like this, just scaled so that there's no tiling of the texture or anything that you can really significantly notice. Plus as well, with a thing like this, you're not going to look at it up close. So we're going to plug that in there. We're going to plug that in there. Here we go. Now we're seeing some more things. So this is metal. So we are going to make it metallic. Nice and cool like that. Metallic on the outside and how it kind of looks. Destiny doesn't actually use metallic, or it does, but it doesn't. It's kind of weird, but more specifically, the way that they implement it means that, I don't know. Metallic in Blender means that your colors are going to get slightly darker to do it because it's weird, but to compromise or whatever, you're going to probably end up like, once you say, I want to color it something different, but if I want to make it that nice like brownish color that we saw in the other thing, maybe even though that this is super light, it's not quite light enough in here. So I'm going to pull out hue saturation value, my favorite cheaty little node. And even though that caps at 2, you can manually set it to higher if you really want to go above and beyond, but obviously 2 is just about good. And in fact, we probably don't need it. I just grab that and then just all right. That's looking all right. I don't think I actually used metallic in that previous instance of it. Okay. So now that we have this relatively like, this metal, we want to add our rust. And we've got our rust textures here, but the first thing that I do, and this is not actually how you want to do it is make a second material basically. So take that on top. Here we go. Then, this is our normal, and then this is our rust. And it is not metallic, so we're going to turn that off. And nothing in that channel. This is good enough for our roughness. So there we go. And as well, we're going to scale this up. Probably not that high, actually. How does it look with 1 and 4? No, we want more. Okay. Okay, that's looking good. Yeah, that's a good size. Okay. So now we've got our rust and we've got our metal. We want to mix them together. And so I am going to mix them together. And obviously this is not going like this. And once again, I just realized I did a thing that is not a normal reaction. But if you don't know Blender materials and you don't know how nodes work, you shouldn't be doing maps. So try to figure out other ways to learn Node Wrangler before trying to tackle this. Anyways, we've got this lovely thing right here. This is our mixing node from before, and so what I'm going to do, I'm going to plug that right in there, and uh-oh, our things are reversed. Okay. We made accidentally super rusty, and not very. There we go, and there's our thing. But let's say we want to make it a little bit more rusty. So I'm going to take our math node here. And obviously add is going to, add to the thing. But we can go like that. We can sort of multiply that to get a little bit more rust. I don't generally do it like this. And honestly, the amount of rust that it has is fine. I just realized I did this bottom part wrong. Or more specifically, you don't want a scenario like this. You want to have your base color multiplied by whatever darkening factor you're using, so that you can have, a light amount of detail without that. So there we go. That looks a little bit better now. So, all right, there we go. We got our rusty material, but this right here, the mixing of the two materials, we don't actually want this. It's a little bit less efficient, and when you do it all over the place, it's going to impact your performance, and it's not going to be great. So now that we're in the state that we're in, what I usually do is that I separate this out a little bit. I get a bunch of mixed nodes. And just like this, I add them to all of the different channels. And now I take this and I plug them into there. And I should have been looking at this. And then finally, we just take our inputs and we plug them into the same things. And we don't have an AO, so I just change the AO. But, oh, of course. I'm going to pull out a regular mix node for this. Obviously, once again, we have the metallic here. And so I'm going to say 1 and 0 for our metallic. Plug that into there. Plug that into that. And so that way it is just metallic on the metal part and not metallic on the rust part. Now, once again, this controls how rusty we get. And so now this is a properly mixed material with two different things. I'm going to be honest, most of the time I do just stick with what I had before with the two BSDFs. But this time I'm showing you the right way because I want you to know the right way to do things. All right. So that's sort of the basics. Now let's see how I've done things over here, because there is a lot to unpack and a lot of materials. So let's start with our windows. So we have our two inputs here, and in fact what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this and bring it to the outside. Never mind, I'm not going to do that. We're going to go back in because I forgot. I don't know exactly how it's set up. All right, so here's our diffuse. Here's our diffuse alpha. Here's our normal. So those are our inputs. And so everything that goes inside here, I deemed as static. So like this material or these textures are always going to be there. This is not the one to start with, actually, now that I think about it, because we have parallax to talk about, and parallax is... okay. But I shall persist. So, parallax. This is an effect where basically it looks 3D when it actually isn't 3D. Like, these windows are actually planes, but as you can see there, when I look around, it's got depth to it. That is done with this parallax node. And as you can see, we can control that depth, make it look different. Once again, this is one that you can find in a lot of my maps. And if not, I think Jed posted it somewhere. If you can't tell, I take a lot of my stuff from Jed. Not a lot, but a lot of the more complicated stuff. So, let's take a look at what we have here. We've got kind of a rat's nest of nodes here, so I'm going to try to move things around so you can kind of more tell what's going on. So going into here, we have this right here, which is our roughness. Once again, it is literally just taking the diffuse and then multiplying it, because diffuse is roughness. And then we're just taking in our thing here. And we're mixing these together. And that mix is like that. So that mix is just from, okay. Yep, okay. So this right here is our factor. So obviously change these. And then this is our that. And then it's just mixing with the diffuse to do that. Okay. And as well, that means that you can separately change the roughness of the windows from the windowsills. Very cool. And then we're mixing that again with up here, which is, let's take a look at that color ramp. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading my own notes again. Maybe I shouldn't do this. But you can kind of see what I'm doing. All right, and then here is our regular mix. So now taking from down here, let's take a look at each one of these channels. I don't use this for the windows personally. The shattered look, it's just not that great. This right here, that's just our windows. The only difference with this is that, once again, it's just taking in the UV, your parallax node, which we'll cover later, maybe. I don't know. And then that goes into there. Honestly, this isn't as complicated. The only complicated part about it is just the fact that it's got parallax and you're mixing it in a way that you're mixing this so that either so that the window still stays in the foreground, but then the stuff gets parallaxed in the background. And yeah, very, very weird stuff. And it all comes together to make our nice window. I should not have started with that. I'm sorry for ranting. Okay, Let's take a look at our cracked concrete. Once again, we have our constant textures here. Generally with more like stony or stuff like that. Generally, what it's going to end up being is that ideally it is literally just maybe a normal and just the color gets changed every now and then. In this case, I don't even think the color gets changed. It's just this diffuse and this normal that changes over time. So those are our two inputs. And we're looking at this up here, by the way. So that's just multiplying by this because we've got this right here, which has a little bit of something. So we're just multiplying that, and then we're taking that, and we've got this sort of rocky texture. And those two are mixed together in a funky little way. And that funky little way is going back here. And so here we have this weird looking mixed channel that always generally comes in the red. We've got our ambient occlusion, nothing in the blue. And we've got two normals that are universal throughout the material. So those go straight in. Now, looking back at here, what is this right here? This right here is a map range. And so what it is if I take out a color ramp, when I move the color ramp around, it sort of changes how the properties of it behaves. But you see, you can't plug in this sort of slider input into your node group. So the math node equivalent of it is the map range. So if you see here from my outputs, I can sort of like change different qualities of it. And it's basically doing what the color ramp did, but with a math node. And so we're using that, and we're taking this output right here, which is just what the map range is doing, and we're mixing it together. And so we're mixing this with this, like that. And we're plugging that in, and there you go. Diffuse goes base color, also goes to roughness, yada yada yada. Simple material, all things considered. Nice a little bit of mixing. All right. Plaster. This one kind of sucks, but it is very important because it starts introducing color attributes. Boy, howdy, do not like color attributes. So, this is how Bungie mixes a lot of their materials like this. If I go back out here, you see that basically you've got the bricks, and then you've got the like painted plaster. I call it plaster. I don't think it's plaster. I don't know what's called. I call it plaster. Phasa's a great thing. Anyways, so this is how they mix together. So as you can see that in here, these control just how they mix. So what this is that you've got your three brick textures, and then you've got your you've got the like stony stuff. You got this blue paint, which you can see here, and you got some normals. And what this is really doing, is this not even connected to anything? Cool. Is this not connected to anything? Cool. Okay. I guess it doesn't need to. Um, so, what this is doing seems kind of self-evident, but we start here with our sort of plaster material. And it's just taking in whatever color we want from there. And then it is getting mixed together with this blue. And this blue is around the edges. And you'll notice that it is a little bit more than what this is up here. Because this right here, it's the same input. Like we're both taking the vertex color, but we want this one to be a little bit brighter because looking at this material again, you want these edges to appear. So that goes out a little bit more. And then we take Oh yeah, there's the alpha as well. So we take that, and that becomes our little mixy thing here, which we then multiply with this up here, and now we mix in the bricks. And you can see there how it makes that pattern. Um, Obviously, this took a lot of trial and error, and it doesn't look completely game accurate, but it's close. Um, in fact, yeah. Now that I look at it, I think one of these is meant for the bricks, and one of them is meant for specifically the blue. But whatever, I made it work. And so, yeah, once again, doesn't really isn't really too bad. One thing to note, obviously, we don't want everywhere to look like bricks, so we take the same mix one that we do for mixing our bricks into the diffuse, and we take that and we plug that into the factor there. So now, only where is it bricks, it will be bricky, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Okay, that's cool. Let's pull out of this, move on here. All right, same deal, same texture, cracked concrete. We've already covered that, and rusty metal. So that's a few examples specifically from Widow's Court. If you want more details, or if you want me to, or if you want to just see me run through this process, I streamed it a while back now. I'm so sorry about how long this took. I streamed it, and you can just watch me chugging through this process. I don't really say out loud what I'm doing specifically, but you can see me toying with the nodes and seeing how things work and things like that, and that could be very helpful to your learning. So, anyways, I'm going to move on to the next section of the video, which I don't know what that is yet. So that next section is in fact the end. I don't think I've got anything else I really want to talk about with this. There's so much more to talk about. I know there's a lot I didn't cover. That's the more like minute little details and things like that. And there's a lot of tips that I know I didn't mention that I've picked up over time. But general thing that I just want to say is once again, good luck with this process. I'm once again so sorry about how long this tutorial is and how how unspecific and probably unhelpful it'll end up being. I hope that you gleaned some knowledge out of this, at least to get yourself started. Um, but anyways, plans for the next few videos, now that I'm in a permanent residence and have a little bit of time before the final shape. I'm going to try to chug out get the rest of this video series done before the final shape comes out. Otherwise, it's going to be another few months, but we'll see on that. But, yeah. Oh, yeah, speaking of final shape, get ready for Charm to break. I don't really talk about it too often, but every update, obviously, their encryption is changing. And in fact, certain things like the raid encryption and stuff, they've changed the way that they do it. I really like the new system because it means that Bungie decides when the content is given to us, not we decide, basically, which is very nice. Anyways, this has gone on too long. I apologize again. I wish I could give you a better, more succinct version of this video. But even ignoring my 45-minute long tangent into random ass math nodes and fumbling around trying to make an effect, this is not going to be too cohesive, I don't think. But yeah, I'm sorry, but at the same time, have fun with this. This is quite the process. So, pretend there's a cool outro. Hopefully there will be more to come. And, well, I already said the magic words. You know what I mean.